Hello, everyone. I'm Traci Arieli, end of life doula and founder of Comforting Closure. Welcome to another episode. I'm often called to help families figure out when a person may be ready for hospice and to lead those conversations. Caregivers usually see the changes first. They know something has shifted, but they don't know how to name it or how to talk about it with the person they love. This conversation is about doing exactly that. We'll talk about what hospice actually is and how to start the conversation before things reach a crisis point. I'm joined by two people from Caring House Hospice, David Zartman, Executive Director and Director of Community Engagement, and Joanna Franco, Director of Operations. We'll talk about their hospice home, common myths about hospice, and practical ways families can think about timing and care. So grab a warm drink, find a comfortable seat, and join us for the conversation. David and Joanna, welcome and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us. Excited to be here.
For listeners who have not heard of Caring House Hospice, what is it?
Joanna, you start. She's been here longer than me by a little bit, so we may as well start with her.
So I've been here now for 5 years. So Caring House is a home away from home. I would say we care for residents and their loved ones at a difficult time when it's, the end of life, or, maybe they got a prognosis that it was unexpected and they're not familiar with. So they come here and we are just the village behind their support group.
What I would add to that too, and Joanna said it very well, is to dive ever so slightly deeper, is just a place of respite for both a resident and the family. So they have some respite from emotional struggle, physical, if they were caring for someone themselves, which, as we all know, is extremely difficult, and as necessary, also financial respite as well. So we can help them with that. So it's a place of respite for both the family and, of course, someone who is actually on hospice care.
So I'm really curious, how did both of you arrive at Caring House? What was your journey?
I like to share my little background because I found myself in a place during the pandemic. I was working at a business office. I was the office manager. I'd been there 2.5 years. And then a pandemic hit, and I felt like I hadn't done anything with my life. Like I felt like I had no purpose. Like, what am I doing here? The world's gonna end, and I felt like I didn't serve anyone, and I was just wasting my life away in that little cubicle. And so one night I was debating whether I was going to stop working and be with my daughters and do homeschooling during the pandemic. And I was trying to think of a way to let my boss know that I was going to put in my 2-week notice. And the next morning I was just browsing through jobs, and there was an opening for Caring House. And I had most of the things listed that were required. I had almost all of them that I thought, oh my gosh, this is me. Like, I can do this job. And so I just sent in my resume, and within a couple hours, I got a call back. And the gentleman behind that phone call said, well, let's meet up today for a quick interview. I just want to meet you and see, what you can offer us. And I thought, well, that's weird. That was so quick, And he wanted to meet for coffee. And I was like, well, that's random. Why should I just go meet this person? I don't even know this person. I have no idea about Caring House prior to that. And so I took it, I went over, I met with him, and sure enough, it brought me here. And I think this is exactly where I needed to be. It has completely changed my life, my family's life, my perspective with death and just facing death every day. I really needed to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you with that change in perspective, coming from the tech world. Once you get into care like this, it really changes how you live. And it's a really nice change. It really puts your values in clear focus about what's important. And big hint to those people out there, not money. So, yes, we work, but that's not a driving factor. Now, David, how about you? How did you arrive there?
In some ways, very similar to Joanna, and it sounds like from you as well, coming from tech. In brief, I had started my own company back in 2005 and had run that successfully, grown it from seed to scale. And it was a communications company based about the Toyota brand, and had created this Toyota Owner Media. Was doing very well at it and everything, and in fact was living in Spain, of all places. And as while I was living in Spain, in Malaga on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, I was like, I'm not really doing anything human centric here. I'm not, this is, it's just not, I've had enough of this. I wasn't in a bad way. I needed something more. I want to give more to the world. So when we came back from Spain, I went back to school, I got an MBA, and I wanted to take what I'd learned as an entrepreneur and running my own company and the business school and put it somewhere that was more community facing. So kind of like Joanna, sort of out of nowhere, this job popped up quite close to where I lived, which in LA, as you can imagine, is rare and valuable in and of itself. And just like Joanna, within a couple of hours, I get this call. And I had been through quite a few job interviews, up to like 6 or 7 rounds. And I was just sort of like, oh my word, what does it take? And same thing. Call, can you come in today? We had this initial chat. I love what I saw. And I think I had one more brief interview and I was hired. And I was hired as the director of development at that time because I knew how to do a lot of, when you're running your own company, you either make money or you fade away fast.
Yes.
So that's how I started. And then when the previous executive director continued on, then they put me in the role. And to wrap up, as you both have said, it was definitely a job where I absolutely didn't know what I didn't know, but every day was so eye-opening to me. It was exactly without knowing it, what I wanted to do in that human-facing theme. And then, of all things to happen, we can talk about it later if you want, my own parents, just in October, November of last year, both passed away and they both went on hospice first. And so this job, in some way, had opened me up in ways that I never could have possibly done in a healthier way of seeing both my parents. And they died 13 days apart. It was just like boom, boom on hospice. And so somehow I almost never use this in my life, but in some ways it was very much meant to be to help that whole process go. And it has been very powerful and very meaningful to me working at Caring House.
And how long have you been working there?
Let's see. I started in June of 2023, so coming up on a couple months away from 3 years now.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm really sorry for your loss, and I'm glad that you had this knowledge and the support that you have. It's a rarity, and I'm so glad that you have it.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Now, having a hospice home, that is another rarity. It really, I know we're in the area I live in the Bay Area, I think there's one that we have now, and it's really, they're not common. Why do you think having an actual physical home, a hospice home, why does it matter? Especially when most hospice care happens at home or in a hospital, other facilities.
Joanna, why don't you launch again with that and I'll follow up.
Yeah, I'd had the same question when I first came on board. I worked in the senior communities and big facilities where elderly people go and stay and spend their last years of life, but there's a process and a transition. Here we specifically serve the ones who are weeks to maybe a couple months of life. And I thought, well, then how much is the need out there? We're probably going to be empty all the time. And I was trying to figure out, how do we reach out those families to see if they even wanted to come, because most people will either pass away in the hospital or at a skilled facility or at home, right? The hospital will discharge you once you're on hospice. And what I came to see here was that the need is so great, it's much greater than what we can offer here. We have 6 bedrooms. We're full probably 80% of the time. And when we're not, we'll get like these waves of breaks, but then we have a waiting list. And more often we have to turn away residents that you need to come here. So I would say the importance is because most people have that come here maybe have children at home and they don't want to pass away at home so that their families don't have that memory. Um, the burnout of the family member being the caregiver, we see that a lot. So they'll care for them as long as they can at the home, and then they hit a certain place where it's too overwhelming. They can't be emotionally involved and be the caretaker. So that's when we'll get the call and they need help. So yes, the need is really out there for families that don't have, not even if they don't have a support group, because the support group could be the ones that get burned out towards the end.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree 100% with that, and add that through not just my own, but with a couple of friends of mine whose parents did hospice, uh, their parents passed away at home on hospice care. They were worked to the ragged edge. They didn't realize it going into it.
Yeah.
And it was powerful for them and very meaningful, but it really, really, really took a toll, not just emotionally, but honestly, just physically, when people realize what's involved. And I think part of what we're trying to do, incidentally, is just educate on that. Not for our sake, not for Caring House. I mean, we're a nonprofit, right? Not so that people come to us, but just so everyone is educated. Like, just be aware of what this hospice journey can sometimes entail. It can be extremely difficult and in many realms of emotional and physical. So that's where that need, people are starting to learn that a hospice house that has the right caregivers that are trained for this, that focus on this. This is not just a board and care, right? Death and dying is so niche and so important that this is really valuable. And we consider ourselves and are thought of as a community partner in that way. We're trying to partner with the community to make sure that people's lives at the end of life are as profound and meaningful and connective as it possibly can be, instead of painful and exhausting and the kids are there and all that kind of thing at home. Instead, we hope to make it the opposite at Caring House.
Yeah, I think people are surprised when their loved one goes into hospice about what hospice actually entails and how it's not 24/7. Most of the time it's, if you have a person, the nurse, hospice nurse coming over, it's 1 to 2 times a week at the beginning and, for an hour at a time, and then you're left alone to do the caregiving. And it is such difficult work. And, 50 years ago, when people lived close to each other and you'd an extended family and there was much more community healthcare, you'd neighbors that would come in and people were much more involved in their churches. And so you had really community death care.
Mm-hmm.
Now there isn't, we don't have that. So you have two things. One, people don't know what illness and death look like actually what it looks like. And you don't have the support that you used to. And so having a place where people can go and having that education as part of what you guys do is so important. I wish we did as a society a better job at really informing, really educating people, because that's a huge part of the battle.
It really is. And it's interesting you bring that up, Traci, because one thing that we've just been sort of touching on recently within the house is there's the death and dying side, and then we also want the families and even the residents to think, that it's also the life at the end of life, that they aren't just coming here to just fall off a cliff, right, and pass away and die, but they know that their loved one or the person themselves go, I'm going to have a good life here until that life is gone.
Yep.
And that's really positive to think about, I think, and to act on. I don't know. What do you think of that?
I totally agree. When I talk to people about, I'm really fortunate because the clients, the majority, not all of them, but the majority of clients that I have had and continue to have come to me before they're actively dying or before that time period. And it's really a conversation about quality of life. And so when I have conversations, even when it's about the advance directive, I always start off with quality of life. What does quality of life look like to you? Because death is one point in time. You have a whole life until then. And either you're going to make the decisions about what your quality of life, what that looks like, or someone else is going to make it for you. And you don't want someone else making it for you. So it's about really focusing in and talking about what quality of life means to you, and then communicating that out to not only your loved ones, the healthcare advocate, but your doctor, if you're in an assisted living residential community, them also. So it is these conversations that we don't have also.
Yes. Yeah. Well said. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think too, the fact that we see death as someone elderly or someone that's lived a full life. So we don't plan or think about it before, right? And the reality is that we see here residents as young as 35 years old to 104 years old. But still, that 35-year-old still had a life prior to entering the caring house, and they were a person, and they were someone that, had friends and a family and goals. And so we see death differently once they come in here.
I'm curious about the experience for someone that's entering the hospice, your hospice home, the Caring House. What can they expect? What is that for them and their family? What does that look like?
It looks like they're coming into their own home, I would say. We have a great team of about 11 caregivers, most of them who have been here since day one. So they have seen over 800 residents come through the Caring House. They're very familiar with the death process and, transitioning and symptom management, which is all more medical things. And but they're also very compassionate about, being afraid and the anxiety about dying, and the families process how they process grief and anticipatory grief, and how they deal with the changes of the loved one not wanting to eat. The caregivers are able to support them through that, and just listen, right? We don't tell them how they're supposed to feel. We just listen and help them get through the process, by being there.
Very
So
nice.
I would say yes, it's a very welcoming home. They're coming into their home and their space. They have a private room. They have 24-hour care, so someone is always within a few feet away, checking in on them, making sure they're okay. We care for the family as well. We're always offering them something to eat or something to drink. Um, Take a nap in our living room or in one of the reclining chairs in the bedroom. We'll keep it quiet for them. So we make it as welcoming as possible.
And I know that you said that most of your clients or most of the people that are in your home have between days and weeks that usually come in that. So do you ever have people who have months who actually take advantage of hospice and to better their quality of life versus going in at crisis?
Absolutely, we do have the ones that come in, and because now they're receiving more care, or more attention that maybe they weren't receiving at the hospital, or they were probably depressed because now we're on hospice. And once they arrive, and like David said, it's not a sad setting, it's not a depressing setting. We are here, like, we're gonna have make every day a great day for them. And so, yes, they do improve. Their quality of life does improve. We've had a couple that had to go back home or, move out of the caring house because they were doing so well.
Nice.
Yeah.
David, did you have anything to add or? I know, Joanna, you're so well spoken that
Yeah.
and your operation so that you're there day in and day out.
I mean, there's nothing to add. She did it beautifully. She is the director of operations, and she handles admissions and talking with such. And I do, every day I walk the halls multiple times, and I chat with the residents and such. And so my part is in this is to make sure that they're welcome and to know that at any given time they can also knock on my door. I actually work in the garage of all places. We've refitted our garage so that they probably wonder, like, where is his office? So I make sure that they know, hey, I'm David, if you need anything. And believe it or not, where I come in, besides just being there for them and letting them know that if necessary, they can come to me, I often am the one who fixes things like IT, computers. One of the things we did, I did it, but we did as a team was we brought in, iPads for people and wireless earphones so people can have communication and entertainment. And so people will ask for that. I just had someone literally yesterday asked to have to bring in the earphones because they had wired already and they were tired of trying to sleep and everything. So I was really happy to bring in these brand new JBL press the pairing button and here we go. Is everything good? Can you hear it? Okay. So I love that because here's the thing. At a place as small as Caring House, no job is above or below anybody.
Yes.
And I'm not getting into the weeds of like the licensing and like, what I'm allowed to do by the letter of the law. What I mean is if I need to clean up trash, if I need to help set up IT, if I need to pull out the garbage, whatever it is, I'm going to do that. Anyone will. We all will. You know what I mean? And that's the vibe that we want to get is that we're all family here. And, director level just means, hey, we'll throw ourselves in as much as we can to make sure you, the family, and you, the resident, you get what you want. You need to get some special, mint ice cream. I'll drive over and get it. And I've done that. And I love that.
That's great. And that's how it should be, especially with a smaller, medium-sized business. Even a large business, I think people should just wear many hats.
Yes. Yes. And that's where my background comes in. I'm not trying to throw it back to me, but I was just used to it anyway, as a kind of a bootstrapper and then building it up. There was no like snapping your fingers, having someone bring you the bagel.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Right. And that's like the simplistic thing. It was like, if there's a problem, I have to fix it now, here, today. And I think that really is important at a hospice house, no matter where it is, whether it's here or anywhere else. Just like everyone is there with one thing in mind. That's the mission. And the mission is the people and their quality of life, Traci, like you said, the quality of life. And we're all there for it. We're all in.
Yeah, I think it's important in every business to be like that, but especially in a business where, and I hate to call it a business because it's not. What you do is definitely not a business. You have to, but
right.
It is even more important when you're dealing with people's lives.
Yep. Yep.
And you are now, from what you see, and I know we spoke about it briefly about how people are afraid of hospice. Why do you think that there's this fear? Why do you think that people delay hospice so much, even when they see people are suffering?
I mean, I'll start for this one just so I can throw it to Joanna, only because, having finally been through it myself, right? Not that long ago. I think it honestly comes down to, you could say it's lack of education, but it's beyond that. It's just the fact that none of us really, most of us anyway, really don't want our loved ones to be gone. And to finally sit down with someone like Joanna, who is the best, and don't get, too embarrassed, but she's so incredible at being able to sit down and empathetically and compassionately, and not just, with Joanna, it's never just like, oh, it's just one more today. To have someone like her, at the end of the day, you're when you're about to sign papers, you're in a way saying, wow, yes, it's real. My mother or my father or my spouse, whatever, really is probably going to pass away. And it's that weird not weird, just that normal mental realization that if you accept hospice, you have to accept that probably they're leaving you. And that's a painful thing to admit, even if you know all the scientific facts. And so that's where someone like Joanna, I'll toss it over to now, where she really, you know, is so much gold for us and so valuable, is that to let people know that it's beyond just numbers and signing things, that there's something good that can come out of this. That's my take on it. Joanna, I don't know. What do you think?
Thank you. Thank you for all that, David. um, I think besides culture, sometimes culture has to do with it, religion, um, education for sure, I think. But even if we're educated, sometimes, we don't want to admit it or see it for what it is. I think a lot of times I do find families once they come here, because we're the Caring House, and we're a residential care facility that provides care for hospice patients, but we're not the actual hospice agency or the hospice um, program. We're the home where they would come and receive hospice services, but just families see us as a hospice home. And so just that, like David mentioned, oftentimes while we're sitting here, they'll, be in tears and have their feelings out, because they feel like, okay, this is it. I'm signing in my spouse or my sister, and this is their last place they're going to be, because they're not going to come out of this home. And so we do often see that, it's unexpected. People don't expect it. People feel like hospice means that it's a death sentence. I think a lot of times they feel like with hospice, morphine comes into place, and morphine's going to speed up their process. That's the first thing they'll ask me, like, oh, well, when will you take when will they take the morphine? And how quickly does it work? And it's like, it doesn't work that way. The morphine's a very low dose, and it doesn't speed up things. It's going to help them stay comfortable, but it's not going to make them go faster. They're still going to, pass away on their own time. And when they're ready, it's not just because we're medicating them. And so I think the misconception about just hospice and being the first time they're going through it, if I find families that maybe it's been the second or third time they've had a loved one on hospice, they're a little bit more comfortable and accepting than someone that's just hearing about hospice and they're not educated and feel like, oh, now I'm giving up on my loved one.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. I'm giving up on someone. That I hear that so much,
Yeah.
that they feel that they are giving up. And um, part of that is education. Part of it is having those conversations. We talked about quality of life beforehand, and I wish as communities, and this needs to come from doctors. It needs to come from residential communities. It needs to come way before hospice home. I think that if we have those conversations with our loved ones about what quality of life means to them, those decisions become far easier
Yeah.
Mhm.
for us. I'm really curious, since both of you work in this day in and day out, self-care. I mean, you're seeing people at their most vulnerable, at their most emotional times. How do you take care of yourselves, and how do you make sure that, uh, let me just say, the 11 people for 6 rooms is really impressive. I'm extremely impressed with that ratio of being able to take care of a person who's there and their families. Um, but how do you take care of yourselves? How do you make sure that you're not getting burnt out?
I feel like we take care of each other. To me, after 1 month of being here, and my office used to be in one of the residents' rooms, so it was on the side of the hallway where all the rooms are lined up together. Um, and seeing, people passing almost every other day, because, we have at least 8 admissions per month, and so there's about 10 passings per month, let's just say. So we see it almost daily. I thought, like, oh my gosh, how can I work here? This is going to be hard. At first I was like, oh, I can do it. I'm familiar with hospice. And then seeing it every day, I found myself taking it home, and then like getting a little bit anxious about death, and like, oh my gosh, people don't really know, but in that home, almost every day someone's going to pass away. And in our outside lives, we very rarely see someone pass away, right? Maybe our grandparents, or we attend a funeral once in 5 years. But here it's death is happening. And so I started taking that home with me. And one day I came into the office and I saw three of the girls that were here. Someone had just passed away and they were standing outside the room, just being present for the family and kind of huddled. And then they embraced each other with a hug. And that's our team that works here. And then they went on for their next, to keep going throughout the day. And I was like, wow, like they're amazing. If they can come in every day with a great attitude, ready to served. It's never like a drag or like, here we go again, or let me clock in for work. Literally, it doesn't feel like work for us, I think. It feels like we're just going into our other home. And so it felt very light. And so for me, work here feels very light. It never feels like I'm stressed or overworked or I don't want to come into work. So I think that's our self-care because, yeah, we have families at home that need us as well. So once the girls or our team, clocks out for the day, I think they go home and take care of their families, and then they're happy to come back the next day. So we support each other. I feel like our self-care is just being supportive for each other. Someone needs to, be out for a day. Please do it. They need to take care of their family because they're sick, or they need to go to a school event. We're very flexible with each other and covering each other so that everyone has time to do the things that are important, like our families.
Yeah, here, it's so true, Traci. The caregivers, as I call them, the rock we all stand on. They are the most important thing because they are obviously, but not just the boots on the ground, but the truly the face of Caring House, right? 24 hours a day. So flexibility is a given for them. We're going to bend over backwards to make sure that the things they need, they're going to get. Not just family, but in the place. One thing I'll do when I walk through the hallways is I'll just say, is there anything you need to help make your lives easier? How can I stop the things that are bad? How can I help that? That's like that business side of me, the director side. But also little things like, having, monthly appreciation lunches where we'll bring in pizza or catered. And by catered, I just mean, food, not fancy stuff, but we'll bring in food, right? Italian or whatever it is, and bring that in, let them know that it's for them, not for us. It's for them to enjoy. And we make sure that the different shifts can get it as well. Another thing, which I really love, and Joanna sort of talked about a side of this with that group, is that, it's not a factory. And when someone passes away, there's I don't want to say a ritual, but we acknowledge that something happened in that room that was profound. And so we don't just turn it over. We don't just, as soon as someone passes away, we don't just clean it and, 15, 20 minutes, an hour later, someone else is in there. We put their name on the pillow, and we put their name and we write, a message to the departed person on the board. And we'll leave it empty for a day or two. We always do that because it's a moment, whether you can think of it culturally or just simply just the right thing to do. Let that spirit go on its journey from that room. And at the same time, it lets the caregivers remember they cared for so-and-so in there. As they walk by, they just might look in for a moment and go, oh yeah, Mark was here, Jennifer was here, whoever it was. And I think that's important because it's our own way of remembering that we're dealing with human beings who have lived a life and have passed away. And I think that helps too, that we all know that this is not just some kind of conveyor belt, right? This is a very real place with a very, very profound event happening here. And I know I do the same thing too. I'll say people's names. It's a strange thing that I've always believed gives power, is that saying the name of someone who has passed. And so I'll just sort of breathe their name out and remember them a little bit. We really honor and remember them. So that helps keep the staff, I think, understanding that we know that it's human and that they're human as well. So
I absolutely love that. And something that I was thinking of, Joanna, when you were talking and you were saying how all of you see death almost every day there. and then you go home. And most people might see it once every 5 years. And then it made me think about you, David, and your experience. And I think we're very close in age. I'm in my, and you might be in your 40s, but I'm in my 50s. And
I'm in my 50s.
yeah.
So, yeah.
So what's really interesting is people around their 50s, their parents are starting to age. And so they're seeing their parents and their parents' friends, people that they've grown up with, like people I've grown up with, my parents'
Right.
friends are having severe illnesses and are starting to die. And so people in my generation now are seeing death a lot also. And it might not, they're seeing decline and death. And even though it's not happening to me, it's happening to my loved ones. And it's really airy. It causes, I'm not going to say depression, but it's for most of us, it is the first time we're really in it. We're really experiencing death. And it's unfortunate that we don't understand it beforehand.
Well, it definitely speaks to me because I came from a family dynamic of sort of disengagement for the vast majority of life. That included my own grandparents when they passed away. It was just like I was at college and they called up and, Grandpa Walter died. And I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, Dad, I'm so sorry to hear that. And like 5 minutes later, I'm just back at school. There wasn't that sort of family dynamic for me. So it's been actually healthy for me as I sort of improved my relationship and sort of became more present, I think is the word that I use and a lot of people use, and connected more with that you start to think about it and you start to see it and you're not as disengaged. That's a really healthy thing. And it kind of loops back to what we were saying 15 minutes ago, which was, the people that don't want to face it. But as you said, Traci, you can't miss it. Your parents are starting to fail or fade or whatever the right word is, or just, decline. I don't know this. I don't know what the happiest adjective is, but they just are, or you're seeing it. And isn't it a trip where like you start to realize the reason that, the 99-year-old lady in Italy who is still sipping her wine and smoking her cigars or whatever it is, the reason that's a story is that it's so rare to have someone like that everyone really does decline. And boy, yes, we still have a lot of work to do to just sort of take a deep breath and just go, okay, we can navigate this. We can make this quality as best we can, and that sort of thing. And that's 1% a day. We're trying to change that narrative, just like you said. I don't know, Joanna, what do you think?
No, yes, for sure. I was gonna just mention Sandra
Oh yeah.
quickly. We had a really good resident care manager assistant here at Caring House. She'd been here since day one, since it opened, and she was kind of like my mentor when I came on board. She took me under her wing, even though she was a caregiver as well. And I came in as the administrator. She really mentored me. And so I got to spend 3 years with her. And then in our fourth year, she became ill and passed away from diagnosis in July to she passed away in November. So it was very quickly. And she always would tell me that this was a special place and people who are meant to be here are going to be here. And we should always look for the lesson in things and learn who we are by seeing, all the experiences. We see the families and the different dynamics and the parents not speaking to their kids, or children showing up that haven't spoken to their loved ones for years, but now they're here at their deathbed and they show up. And so she would say, like, we have to learn about life through this. Like, there's a reason why you're here and there's a reason. And when she got sick, I kept telling her, like, I don't think I could do this anymore. Like, we work together. We're partners here. And she said, you have to continue doing that, because just like laboring a baby, here it's like the labor of death, and someone has to do it. And so I want to say that I'm still here because of her, because she taught us that life, there's still life after death, and we have a purpose and we have to finish our purpose. So
Yes.
Beautiful story.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to talk about how people come to the realization. I know that you see people after they've come to the realization, but you've experienced this also, of people deciding should they be in hospice. And even before the word hospice ever comes up, are there signs, or what signs tell a caregiver that they should start thinking about the conversation with their loved one? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm gonna bring back earlier. You said that maybe it should start even from their doctors or the hospitals. So we find that almost all the 90% of the time, the doctors are usually not very open about hospice or death, right? So they'll come here already with a diagnosis that we know it's going to cause them to pass away, and still the doctor hasn't said it directly to them. They said like, "Oh, you're going to go on hospice, you're just going to have more support, and they'll be taken care of." So the family still feels like, "Oh, well, there's still more they can do, right? They're going to come here, they're going to eat, they're going to probably start feeling better." And the reality of is that because of their diagnosis or anything that's going on, they can't eat anymore. Maybe eating causes more harm than good. And because the doctor or a medical professional hasn't said it out loud to them, they're still not accepting. Even if they're signing on to hospice, there's still that hope of maybe things can turn around, because I saw them and I saw they could drink a cup of juice perfectly fine, so I'm sure if you prepare them a meal they can eat it. And so we have to hear very carefully, because we don't have medical backgrounds as well, educate in maybe if you feed them and they can choke and aspirate, and that's just going to cause more problems. Or just say, the reality. Sometimes we have to say the reality, like they're going to choke and that's how they're going to pass away. They're going to have a more suffering towards the end if we don't take these precautions. And so I think that families don't really know. Sometimes even if they're coming into the caring house and they're signing the hospice agreements, they still don't accept hospice or
No,
that they're dying.
the people, so there are the family members, and then there are the people themselves who are dying, who are terminally ill. Um, in your experience, are there certain things that caregivers should look for or should try to notice, um, that say, yes, the person is ready to go into hospice? Are there certain questions that they could ask the person who's ill, um, to help them talk about comfort or any fear or exhaustion without pushing the person into making or into hospice? I know that's a convoluted question, but just curious.
No, I understand it. So yes, they know it, they see it, right? We gently educate the patient or the family member, but we have to be so very careful, because, like you mentioned, sometimes they'll say that we suggested it or we pushed them into signing on to hospice, or and so we have to be really careful in the way we see things. We do seek out a lot of support from the social workers, or their medical doctor will say have the nurse come out and talk to the family so they can explain to them that these are the times they have to have the conversations. I find that some families are more open and grateful that we do say, hey, sometimes they'll come in and they'll say, oh, my daughter's going to come out in a few weeks to visit their grandmother or their or aunt, and we have to say, like, they don't have a few weeks. If they want to come out here, they should come out now. Like, don't wait a few weeks. And they'll say like, oh, well, what do you mean? Like, the doctor said I have 6 months, because hospice is a 6 month, you have to qualify for 6 months of life to sign on to hospice. And so they feel like, oh, we have 6 months and we've already noticed, skin changes or breathing changes or just their color, demeanor. We're like, you have, maybe a week." And I've had families get really upset at us for saying that. So we try our best so that they can have that time we already know it's the time frame is really small. So we try our best to get them on board so they can have that time with their loved one. It's not always welcome because then we're telling them something totally different that the hospital said to them. And so we have to be careful about it. But we do get families that are grateful that will say, you know, we, I always tell the family once the patient is here in the house and the team can assess them and see where they are, we'll be able to tell you a little bit more like what the time frame is. And I would say 99% of the time, the girls already know just from looking at the patient how long it's going to be.
Do you think the patient knows?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes they do. Um, I think the younger ones that are not ready, right? Nobody's ready, right? But some are angry and are still able to communicate with us. Um, Even though we see it, they'll just be like, no, absolutely not, you know. Yeah.
I could understand. Yeah.
Well, it's hard. We have families that have maybe an elderly um, mother or father, and they don't want their loved one to know they're on hospice. Even though they're on hospice and they're here, we recently just had a family that way. And so they didn't want us to mention the word hospice around their mom or say, that she's on hospice. And so it kind of puts us in a position where we're like, well, maybe she would want to say things that she doesn't say because she feels like she still has a long time, right? But it's not our place, so there's no judge. This is a no judgment zone, and we just, try our best to guide the family as best as we can, but we won't go against their wishes if that was their wish. And that's where it comes to where us now have to be more educated about planning and advocating for ourselves and having it in writing. So when this time comes, people are not deciding what they think is the best thing for you because that might not be it.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
very difficult line to walk. It really is. I hear you. You know, I sometimes I laugh, I joke around and I say, yeah, it used to be that no one wanted to see the tax man. But now
Mhm.
I understand that, yes, no one wants to see the tax man, but no one wants to see the death doula walking up into their door. And when I go in to have conversations, I never, I like the term end of life doula because we've talked about, I think it's about the quality of life. It's about the end of life. Um, but it is a very uh, difficult conversation, and with the family
I was going to
members
ask
and
you,
the person.
Traci, if you don't mind me asking you what you're saying. Like, I know that there's 7 billion people on the planet and they all have a different view on it, but if you could typically say like how you break the ice and talk to someone about this when they come to you as a death doula, like how do you typically speak to someone in those first few minutes about this when they're coming to you for the first time at the realization that someone is going to be passing away or on hospice and needs your guidance?
Yeah, I will, I always start with listening to the person and their family and seeing where they are at, um, and listening to their fears and answering any questions. When I'm looking at talking to a person about, hey, is my loved one ready to go to hospice? I will sit with the person. I always listen to the family, and then I talk to the person who's ill alone.
Oh,
And I always ask them about their quality of life and what good days are and about their experiences. Um, I always ask them also about what they've seen. Have they seen loved ones get sick? Have they seen death before? And because those experiences draw out what they don't want a lot of times, what they don't want for themselves. Um,
mhm.
And I found that by asking those questions and to really focusing on life itself, that almost every single person that I've talked to about hospice, their fear starts to diminish. There's always going to be fear about death. I mean, we haven't done it before, or if you believe in reincarnation, we don't remember doing it before. So even when you have a strong sense of spirituality and a strong belief that there's something after this, there's always going to be that fear.
Yes.
So trying to really focus on what the experience is going to be, what it could be, is really helpful. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it's a great start. It's just really interesting because in a lot of ways, we're all kind of in that same situation where we have to meet families who are facing this, and just that the connection we make and how we can help them. I'm just interested in learning from other people at the same time. Yeah.
And then I bring the family members in and have that conversation with them, with their loved ones, and say, hey, this is what we talked about, and this is the quality of life, and really focusing on that. And it becomes, as I've said before, it becomes so clear when loved ones understand what this person wants from life. It becomes so much easier for them to make decisions for this person when that person can't make decisions for themselves. It becomes so much easier for them. Not that's easy, because it's not.
Yeah.
But you're doing right by your loved one. Have you had any really tough experiences with caregivers on next steps? And what do you do in those situations? Or even a better question, hey, Oren, can we mark here? I want that question cut out of here. And I want to ask this question. What are there any red flags or any, I'm not going to call them mistakes, but anything that people should avoid when taking care of their loved ones in this situation? Any decisions or any choices or anything like that?
I think when you're going through this, for us, there's no right or wrong. I mean, and I think there's opportunities we miss that we could have done something differently that maybe would have changed the way the family member would feel after the fact. But we always say there's no right or wrong. So families, there's a lot of guilt or a lot of what ifs, or why didn't we do something one way or the other? And so I, we're just supportive with whatever decisions they make, even if it's not something we thought we could have made. We often see the family dynamics. So I think that's always a big one. Like, they want to fix all their problems they've had through their life at this very moment, right? And it's like, this is not the time to argue about what happened 10 years ago. Like, right now, let's focus on being present versus being angry. We see a lot of that, a lot of families trying to fix their problems before that had years in the past once they enter this home. And this time here should be focused on in the moment of living, being present versus being angry or arguing over silly things that you can't fix anymore.
David, in your experience, since you come not only from your work experience, but your personal experience of your loss, what do you think?
You touched on it. For me, it's making sure I'm listening more than I'm talking, so that I can be a better advocate. And that might be a 0% advocate, or I can be 99% advocate, but just to listen, like, convey, this is your journey. I am here to be part of that with you and help you. And if you want to talk, great. And I sat out in our living room and opposite people and had long conversations. I've been in rooms with people. I really feel like it's not my place to step in until they invite me to, but listening is acceptable, and to let them know that I'm here for them in any way. It might just be listening, like, hey, I could use some more pudding. I'm going to get that for you, or I'll get a caregiver. I will do that, right? Like that. So, yeah, this fear and if anything, all I can say is that, like I mentioned a minute ago, there's 7 billion people on this planet, or whatever it is now. And like Joanna was saying, these to be present while people have their parts, and who knows what's happened in these families, the dynamics. And boy, I'm not going to change 8 billion people, but I can listen and help someone right here, right now. Maybe just a little bit. Just be present for them. Just be a sounding board. And that works for me. And I feel like I'm not overstepping any boundaries either. I want to be really careful of that. And I think people appreciate that. From my 2.5 years here, they're just appreciative to have someone to talk to. Just the other day, a gentleman was in the kitchen. He was pouring his coffee. Speaking of, before it gets any colder, was pouring his coffee. We always have fresh pastries. A lot of places have it, but we always have cookies and pastries. Usually they're fresh baked. Some people bring them in. And so we start commiserating over that. And what started about like, oh my gosh, we shouldn't be having so many cookies and all this. All of a sudden the guy's like, well, I've spent my whole life working as a garbage man, and there's nothing better than, dealing with that job and having like really good smelling food at the end. He starts talking about his job, and I realized he just wanted to talk about his job and his life for a while. And I was interested. I was genuinely interested. And, I wanted to hear about what he'd done. It didn't have to be about the fact that his wife was back there. And it was so fascinating. You could tell he just wanted to talk about his job and how he got to where he was and how he enjoyed this and that. And when he was done, there was nothing else to say. It's like, well, cool. Like, hey, thanks for listening. I'm going to go back. I'm like, great. Do you want to chat? That was powerful to me, and it worked for him.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have to say, like, how are you feeling? Are you okay? No. Mm-hmm. What an interesting thing. Just hear about his job, 28 years, as a garbage man, which incidentally, this guy was ripped from like picking cans and doing this, right? Like, and he was proud of that. It was just very interesting. So anyway, listen, read the room. And I've had some really amazing conversations. That includes people who, like Joanna at the very beginning mentioned a 104-year-old. One of my favorite stories, talked about it before, elderly, of course, very elderly gentleman who had been a war hero and all this. And I just loved it because he would sit in his bed and play his harmonica. And just to sit there, and he'd look at me and he'd look at us because he played for everybody, and just like literally listening to music, not even language.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, if there's anything I've learned is to listen to people.
Nice.
That's it.
Yeah, this job really helps with that. 2 more questions. I know we're getting to the top of the hour. When you see families come in and their loved ones there, what shifts do you see in them as their loved ones start to get the help they need? Pain management. What do you see? What kind of shift?
I would say relief. They can take a deep breath and sit down and enjoy a cup of coffee. I feel like we take away a lot of their anxiousness and a lot of their worry. So once they're settled in and they kind of see who we are and like, this is real and this is different, you could see just their demeanor just change and completely feel at peace, or just feeling like they're going to be okay. Like we're going to get through this, and we're in the right place.
How can people help? Do you guys have a donation page? Do you have a need for people to come in and volunteer?
What a wonderful question. Thank you for broaching that. We have both. For those who want to support the people who need help, who need financial care, and who need this, we do accept gladly donations of any size at yourcaringhouse.org. And there's a donation page on there. So again, yourcaringhouse.org. That will truly help families who need financial assistance to be there. So that's really helpful. Volunteers, another great thing. Thank you for bringing it up. Can always use volunteers. There's just a tiny bit of a process to do it, just like in most places. So, sign up and do like a background check and a couple of things, because we're dealing with in a residential care facility. But we have a really strong and positive core of volunteers, and we can definitely use more. And there's anything you can help with the residents, you can help with yard work, help with admin. I've got a volunteer right now who's helping us doing like thoughts of marketing and branding, because that's kind of her background. So she does help with laundry and such, but then she'll help us here. So yes, look us up online at that yourcaringhouse.org and just give us a call or stop by the house sometime in Torrance, California, and we would love it. But yes, the donations kind of keep us going. You said at the very beginning, at the end of the day, it is a business in the sense that we have power and water and groceries and salaries of people to pay who are caregiving. And so we really are grateful and can use, any kind of help with that for these patients to do our mission. Our mission is peace at the end of life, and that's what keeps it going.
And I was just going to mention as well that because we're a nonprofit, we don't turn away families for inability to pay. And so 80% of our residents that come to the Caring House probably didn't plan on, passing away or dying. And so a lot of families don't have that extra money around to provide 24-hour care at home or go into a facility. So here we're able to bring them in without that burden of having to worry about how are they going to pay for it. And that's always one of the first questions I'll get when I pick up the phone. They're upset and crying because now they've got this hospice diagnosis, but they're still so much worried about the finances and how can they, they'll ask me, can you take my loved one? And, in a couple of months after I get back to work, I'll repay whatever I can. And so for me to be able to say, thanks to the donors and David and everyone that puts all the work together to collect this money, is I'm able to tell them that let's take one thing at a time, and we're not going to worry about the finances. Let's bring your loved one in, and then we'll work it out. And that's just like, I could see the relief in their voice that, they've been just getting no's. We won't take you because, no one can take someone without any payment. And for us to be able to provide them this wonderful care and they don't have to worry about the cost makes a big difference for them.
It's the care, right, Joanna and Traci too. It's when they come to Caring House, they can instantly see that this is a different type of care, this end of life, what we do, how it's not, I've said it before, it's not on a schedule. It's not like, all right, everyone in the house eats at 8 a.m. and at noon or at 5 and all that sort of thing that you would get at sort of your typical boarding care or facility. We are here to white glove and be custom, bespoke, whatever you want to call it. We're going to take care of you and the family on your terms, on
At
what
the most
you want.
vulnerable time in a person's life, we're there to take care of them. And even if it's just sitting by them and saying, this is normal, your loved one is going, how they're laboring out, this is normal, because people don't see this, is the difference that makes. I cannot tell you how big of a difference that makes.
And sometimes they're able to, there's times where we have multiple families going through that same transition, and they'll sit and share with each other what they're going through. And it kind of just gives them confirmation of everything they've been hearing from, the doctors and nurses, us, but to see another family member actually going through the same, it's been 3 days, they're not eating, not responding, but they're still, transitioning. It gives them kind of that piece of like, okay, we're going through this together, and this is how it's supposed to be going.
Well, David and Joanna, thank you both for being on the show and for the work you do every day at Caring House Hospice. And I appreciate the work you do. For listeners, I know you've already said your website already, but if you could just repeat that for people who want to reach out, that would be great.
Thank you, Traci, for having us on the show. And thank you to all your listeners who, no matter where you are, support hospice and hospice care and end of life. We appreciate all of you and the death doulas of the world. for what you're doing. Yes, it's yourcaringhouse.org, yourcaringhouse.org in Torrance, California. And if you're in the neighborhood, please come by, introduce yourselves to Joanna and I. We would love to just chat with you or anything you would like. We appreciate your support. So thank you.
Oh, I'd love to. Listeners, if you're asking questions about hospice, something important is already changing. You don't have to have the answers, but you do have to start paying attention and be willing to talk about what you're seeing. Talk with your loved one about quality of life. Ask what is getting harder. Ask what matters now. That's usually where the answers are. Hospice is not about giving up. It's about support, comfort, and quality of life for everyone involved. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please comment below or reach out to me directly. And if you found this conversation to be helpful, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. This is Traci Arieli from Comforting Closure, wishing you peace and comfort in your journey. Until next time, take care.